Confused by die cuts? Not sure how to use your Sizzix? Well, stick around. I'm walking you through how to get clean, crisp flower die cuts every time. Hi! It's time once again for coffee, crafting, and cats with the Ginger Cat Lady. I'm Pam, and Harley, well, he is sound asleep right now. Yay! If you've ever wondered how to start die cutting without wrecking your platforms or your patience, you're in the right place. This Make It Monday is great for crafters of all skill levels, especially beginners looking for an easy way to add layered florals to journals, cards, or anything else you dream up. Today, I'm using my Sizzix Big Shot with the Tim Holtz Vault Series flower thinlits. Let's start with the basics. A die cut is the little piece of paper that you cut out. The dies are these little metal pieces that you use to cut the paper with. The images that you see on this piece of paper are what the die cuts would look like. The dies that I'm using today are made by Sizzix, and these are the Tim Holtz Thinlits, the Vault Wildflowers. The number on it is 666565. Well, that's not a good number. So let's go over the platform setup. This can be confusing if you're just starting out, but once you get the hang of it, it's quick and easy. This is my top plate, and yep, it's got that well-loved look. These tend to warp after lots of use, especially since they're the ones taking all the pressure in the machine. So it gets flipped each time I use it to prevent warping. Though, honestly, trying to remember which way I flipped it last, that's the real challenge. I still don't have a good system for that. But if you do, please tell me in the comments. I've labeled one of my cutting plates as the bottom plate, and I always use this one on the bottom so that it stays as flat as possible. Now, I hate it when my dies move, so I decided to put double-sided tape on my platform. It was a good idea at the time, but I wouldn't suggest it. I have since taken off all of the tape. This green platform is called the thin die adapter, and it is used with any of the thinlits that Sizzix makes. And the nice thing about this is that it shows you exactly how to set up the different platforms for your cutting. Now, all you have to do is look at your die cuts and write on the piece of paper on the front. It is going to show you that it is a thinlit. Okay. So since the dies I am using are the thinlits, then we need to make sure that we're using the thinlit setting on the green platform. And it tells us that the tan platform is going to go on the bottom. And then if we're using the thinlit setting, the green platform goes next. And remember, this is not a cutting surface. It's just a platform for the other things to rest on. The other platforms go on top of it. Then the bottom platform goes on. And then what you're going to do is put the thinlits on there face up. Now you can tell if it's face up because see these little ridges? That's the part that does the cutting, and it needs to be face up in order for it to cut. If you put this flat side up, face up, you're just going to cut into your platform, not the paper. You put the die on there, and then the next thing that you would put on would be your piece of paper, and then your top platform goes on. Okay, let's try this with some actual paper. First, we're going to put down our tan platform, then the green platform, and then the bottom platform. And after that, we're going to put on the dies. I want to make sure that when I lay out my dies that I avoid the edges of the platform and that little lip. You get a better cut if you keep them closer to the center of the platform. I like to put as many dies on there as possible to make the best use of my piece of paper. Once they're in place, then I add my paper right on top, making sure that every die is fully covered. So take a look and make sure there's not part of a die sticking out, because if it's sticking out, it's not going to cut. You can use a little bit of washi tape to keep the paper and dies from shifting, and it'll just cut right through the washi tape, and then you just peel it off afterwards. But just don't do what I did and use the double-sided tape. It didn't work, and then it's just a mess to clean up. So you have the piece of paper on. Next comes the top cutting plate. And here's another little trick for you. Make sure that the sloped edge of the top plate goes in first when you feed it into the machine. It just helps to prevent pressure issues and keeps it so that the top plate goes in smoother. I like to run my cuts through the machine twice just to make sure that they go all the way through. And if I have a thicker piece of paper, like watercolor paper, I will run it through like 3 or 4 times to make sure that the cuts go all the way through. Now, sometimes after you've run the die through the machine, the die cut doesn't fall out right away. Don't worry, that's totally normal, especially with intricate or delicate designs. On the back of most dies, especially thinlits like these, you'll notice a bunch of tiny little holes. Those are actually there to help you get the paper out. All you need is a pokey tool or something similar. I like to use a weeding tool from my Cricut stash because it's got a nice point and a comfy grip. All you have to do is gently insert the tip of the tool into one of those tiny little holes and push. You don't need to jam it, just a little nudge will usually lift the die cut from the back and start to release it. If it's a really detailed cut, you might need to poke through 2 or 3 of the holes in different spots to get the whole piece free without tearing it. And once you've got the main piece out, check the die for any extra little bits that are stuck in the design, especially inside things like leaves or petals, and then use your tool to gently pull those out so that the die is completely clean before your next cut. If you don't do that, you won't get as nice of a cut. I cut everything from white paper today, not because I'm being plain, but because we'll be doing something fun with these flowers in part 2. I'll show you how I ink, paint, and layer them to create completely custom florals. And there you go. That's the basics of flower die cutting. I hope this gives you a smoother start with your own die cutting adventures. And if you had fun crafting along with me today, don't forget to come back on Wednesday. I'll be showing you how to make easy flap pockets, a great way to add interactive elements to your journal pages. And then on Finish It Friday, we'll wrap up this die cut series by coloring, layering, and decorating the flower die cuts we cut today. You'll get to see them come to life. And if you missed it, go check out this video on how to create a really cool multi-pocket. It's the perfect place to tuck in some of the flower die cuts we made today. And as always, may your scraps be endless and your glue never dry. See you in the next one. Bye.